Hey, this is Perla Sofia Curbelo Santiago. This is a special episode recorded entirely in English. Our regular podcast opening and ending will remain in Spanish. Thank you for listening. Hola, ¿qué tal? Soy Perla Sofía Curbelo Santiago de Agrochic.com y te doy la bienvenida nuevamente a La Verdura de Hoy, mi podcast sobre cómo la jardinería y la naturaleza pueden transformar de manera rápida y positiva nuestra salud y bienestar general. Soy autora y comunicadora profesional. En cada episodio te presentaré personas que, como tú y yo, viven fascinadas con el mundo de las plantas. Conoceremos detalles sobre sus proyectos personales y profesionales. Y por supuesto, estaré compartiendo contigo recetas de siembra, productos y accesorios que ya he probado en mi patio y jardín y que estoy segura podrán abonar a tu felicidad y satisfacción, tanto en la casa, la comunidad o lugar de trabajo. Presta atención a la verdura de hoy. My guest today is Nailah Blades, a life and leadership coach and the author of the amazing new book, Joyful by Nature, Embracing Outdoor Adventures as Women of Color. Nailah is also the founder of Color Outside, an organization dedicated to helping women of color connect with nature through exciting and fun outdoor events. In today's episode, Nailah shares how her connection to nature began early in life, reminiscing about her visits to her parents' birthplace, Bermuda, where she enjoyed the beauty of the ocean and sand. It's a love for the outdoors she has carried with her throughout her life, from her time in California to now living in Salt Lake City, Utah, with her family. If you're looking to create a space in your life for more outdoor adventures and start the new year with a sense of joy and connection, this conversation with Nailah will inspire you. So welcome, Nailah, to the podcast. Thank you for saying yes.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm very excited too, as I was telling you before we started to record the interview, because I read your book, your new book, Joyful by Nature. I read it at the beginning of the summer, and I read it in less than 2 weeks. And every morning I went to my usual spot in the garden and I started to read about the different topics that you bring into the book, and we're gonna be diving into it. But I really enjoy every single page of it because I was going through that. I just published my book too, and it's in the area of well-being, and I was like, yeah, that's right. I was like talking to myself. So it's a beautiful book, and I congratulate you. And you have to tell me about how's the tour going. But first of all, let's talk about plants or trees that are in your radar lately.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all the lovely things you've said about the books. I really appreciate it. And this is such a good question. I think the trees that are really on my radar right now. So I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we have beautiful fall foliage that comes about this time of year. And, right now in the mountains, all of the trees are starting to change color. And it's so beautiful. So I think the one that's really on my radar, we have a lot of aspen trees here in Utah, and they're, starting to change into that beautiful yellow golden color. We also have a lot of the trees that are turning, red and orange. So those are what are really on my radar. And it's always such a special time of year.
Can you share an experience, a beloved experience that you have maybe from your childhood, you being in nature, and also that help you starting to frame your wellness or well-being concept?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I always think about from my childhood, my parents are actually from Barbados, so little island similar.
Caribbean in the house.
And I was fortunate enough to be able to go and travel to Barbados lots of times during my childhood. So I have a lot of memories. I think when I think about my childhood and nature, I think about the beach and the ocean
Hmm.
and really being able to connect in that way. And later, as I got older, my family moved to California. So again, we were able to really connect to nature through the ocean and through the beach.
Hmm.
So I think those are the things that always just stand out to me when I think about, what was that kind of initial connection to nature? Definitely water and the sea and the sand.
Wow. And, I went to Utah, Salt Lake City a few years ago during the summer, and it's beautiful. And I totally understand when you talk about the mountains. And of course, being from the Caribbean, being surrounded by water, it is like when you go to places that are mountains like that, and you can see different foliage that not necessarily are in the Caribbean or in a tropical island like Puerto Rico, it is mesmerizing. So you live in a beautiful place, and I can imagine those hikes in the area. So yeah, it's a beautiful place, and thank you for sharing that experience from your childhood, because totally it is something that other people that are listening can go back to their childhood and think about that. And talking about the launching of your new book that you launched early in this year, I was very excited to get ahead and read the book. And one of the first question is for you as an author now, how is your current well-being? Because one is writing about well-being, and then you are in the process of you have to adjust yourself, and that is something that me as a writer, I'm like, oh my God, I have to make adjustment because launching a book about wellness is like you have to talk, about it. And people are expecting from you much of it.
Exactly. I know. So, as you know, writing the book it's such a big process and I definitely had to really adjust what my well-being looked like during that process of writing the book because it could have been really easy to just tune everything out, sit at my
Mhm.
all day and just try and write, write, write. And obviously that is not the best way to do it. So I really had to really force myself to be like, okay, no, what is actually going to support me in this moment? And I think the same thing goes for after the book was launched. I mean, I think
Mhm.
things that's so interesting was just writing the book is one thing, and then actually marketing the book and getting out there and selling the book, that's a whole other just can of worms and a whole other job. So I think I've had to be very mindful about like, okay, what is it that I need right now? Also making sure I'm setting my expectations. I think it would be easy for me to say, I'm going to go, go, go. I'm going to like travel all over the country and show up to all of these events, but I know that that would not be good for me and my well-being. So I think it really is just giving myself grace, remembering to pace myself, and also being okay with knowing that sometimes things might slip and I might not be able to keep up with it, but knowing I can get back on track.
Of course, you are a writer, you're writing the book, for example, and but you still have your day job. And of course, as a mom, wife, and friends, you have to, like you said, make those adjustments, but at the same time, sometimes you don't want to write anything. So it is very important to give yourself permission to enjoy the process, because if you don't find the joy in writing, it's gonna it would be another story there.
Yes, you definitely have to enjoy the process because it's such a big process. So you don't want to feel drained by it.
Can you talk about the structure of the book?
Yeah, so I really wanted to. My background is in coaching. I've worked as a coach
Mhm.
for over a decade, so I've done lots of coaching and consulting, and I really wanted the book to feel a little bit like that, like kind of a little coach in your pocket. What could that look like? So really being able to take the reader through that. So that included, lots of storytelling, telling my own story, but also asking a lot of questions, having spaces where the reader could really think through things and jot things down and really think about their own experience. So it didn't just feel like it's me saying, here are all the things you should do, but more so, here are a lot of things for you to consider. Here are the reasons why it's important, and then also having the reader take the time to be able to figure out, what really made sense for them and being able to figure out their own individual path. So that's really how I wanted it to be structured. And like you said, you could start anywhere. I mean, it has kind of the introduction and it talks more about the history of well-being, and especially for women, and also talks about just the history of the outdoors in North America and how a lot of times women of color just haven't really felt connected to that. So that starts out with the beginning, and then it really goes into these different elements that you can consider as you're thinking about your well-being.
And the book has, for those who hasn't have their hands on the book yet, it has exercises that I totally understand, and I felt coached while I was reading it. And because you have exercises that you can jot into the book, I'm the kind of person that really love to write in the book. So your book is all written, has so many marks, so great quotes also. But that permission to, hey, right here in this area, have very useful exercises that you can do at the moment, or you can come back and think about, and makes you go deep into your relationship with nature. And as you were explaining, there has been a broken relationship between BIPOC people and nature. BIPOC, talking about Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And I'm included there. As a Latina. And I really appreciated that first chapter that you talk about the diversity gap in the outdoors. And there were moments that of course, you were explaining what is the Black experience of women and men with the outdoors, but also you talk about the Latinos and in the outdoors. And that is something that sometimes, if you don't stop and ask yourself, what is that relationship? What is that history? Because even when I go outdoors, I feel like vulnerable, unprotected. And that is something that it has to do a lot with the history that it comes with it. Can you talk about that, and how important it is for you that we, specifically BIPOC women, understand that connection between ancestral history and our personal choices, seeking or not seeking that the well-being in the outdoors?
Yeah, so I think it is so complex, and we do unfortunately have this severed connection to nature, unfortunately, as BIPOC people, because of just the different things that have happened historically. And historically, getting outside, going into the woods was not a safe place for many of our ancestors, unfortunately. And the thing I also like to remember is that if we go even further back from that kind of more modern history, it was a place where our ancestors were, and they were very connected to nature, and they did have an understanding of how they fit in, within this world, this full ecosystem of the outdoors. And I think that it's really important for us to regain that connection, because that's part of who we are. And I think it helps us to really connect back to who we are on the inside, who we are at our core. It helps us to connect back to our ancestors and have a really good understanding of the history and why we're here. And I think that it also helps us to start paving a path for the future. So really thinking about, what is it that our community and our children and our siblings and our cousins, what is it going to look like for them to have this, kind of reconnection to the nature like we've had in the past.
Yes, and that diversity also is needed we have to see it in the marketing of the spaces, that we can feel like, we're included. The spaces are created and maintained thinking about us in that space too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, right now, when you think about the outdoor how it's marketed, it's, very white, it's very male, and it's also like particular activities too. And that was something I wanted to break down is like, outdoors and nature, like that means whatever it means to you. So, yeah, that could mean that you go out into the woods and you hike and backpack and do all of these things. Or that could just mean that you have this intentional practice that is personal to you that maybe takes place in your backyard. And that's how you're connecting.
Let's talk about the concept of well-being and self-care, because in the book, you and I have it lined in the book about when you talk about what is well-being, and I'm gonna read something of it. You said well-being is deeply personal. We all have to create our own version of well-being that reflects our own life, lived experiences, and visions for the future. I also believe that well-being should make you feel good about yourself rather than make you feel like you're lacking in some way. And sometimes we start our days feeling or thinking about what we lack. And the precious things of nature is that it's so abundant in so many ways, and it gives you that opportunity of every single day to start your day in abundance.
Yeah, I think well-being is I think it is something that's really personal. It's going to be completely different for every single person, and it's going to be different, even your own individual well-being is going to change from time to time depending on what's going on.
Mhm.
Ultimately, it is the things that we're doing that make us feel whole and make us feel good and make us feel really filled with possibility. And we can't do that if we're starting from that place of lack, like you said. If
Yes.
like, oh, I'm not doing this for myself, or I'm not walking 10,000 steps a day, or I'm not eating
Drinking a glasses of, of
yes,
water.
water, or I know right now protein, 30 grams of so I think there's all these things that we think about when we think about wellness and these things that are being sold to us. And they can
Yeah.
feel like we're coming from that place of lack and making us feel like we're not good enough. And I think it's just the opposite. Our well-being is really personal, and we could factor some of those things in. But it ultimately has to be the things that we can do for ourselves to make us feel whole and good. And I think that nature, like you said, is such a beautiful way to get a lot of that. Nature is so abundant, and a lot of times it is something that we can reach out and touch, and we don't have to buy something. So I think that being able to combine our well-being with the outdoors, with nature, is just such a natural fit. And sometimes we're not thinking about that.
And of course, I love the way you define self-care, which is whatever we need to do to be our best self. I was like, oh, yes, that's it. I love that definition because it was so clear. And again, it gives you that permission of, yeah, I can have another definition of what is it for me, what I need. I don't need to fit in someone else's mold. Otherwise, it's something that I'm enduring myself.
Yes, totally. Yeah. So I think again, we think of self-care and we think of like spa days and bubble baths and, again, things that we can buy to make us ourselves feel better. And sometimes that might be self-care. But ultimately, I think it's like, how can you take care of yourself? How can you be your best self? And also that notion of being your best self, that's going to change. Sometimes my best self is 30% of what I can do. And it is sometimes
Exactly.
I feel really energized and I can really get out there and tackle all the things I want to do.
Well, I'm not gonna give the book, I'm not gonna give away the whole book, but I'm definitely gonna mention a few of the concepts that you bring in the book that for me were so eye-opening, and I thought about them right in the moment. One of them, it is the seed spot concept that of course mine is being in my garden. I go under this bush, we call it in Spanish, it's gandules. I'm gonna find the English name, but it is a beautiful bush tree. And of course, I love to sit there because not only it gives me that seclusion feeling, but at the same time, it's this area that you can feel the breathe, even though it is very hot. during the day. And that for me is my sitting spot, but I can have a few. So I wanted to know about the concept of the sit spot. And of course, where is your current sit spot right now?
Yeah, so that concept of the sit spot, and you explained it beautifully, but just that spot, and again, it can be like in your backyard, on your porch. It could be very close. It doesn't have to be far or anything complicated. But really, that concept of a place where you can just go sit and you can really be present and you can really just kind of absorb nature, the nature around you, and let your thoughts wander. And just kind of like just be there and be present and kind of like let all of that wave over you. So my current sit spot is a little bit of a walk, so maybe like a 10-minute walk from where I am. But we have this really beautiful, it's like a little like duck pond, nature
Mm.
preserve type thing. So I'm able to, and it's nice because it's like you kind of go down a path in a neighborhood, and then all of a sudden this like beautiful space just opens up. So there's the water, and they have, little wooden benches that you could sit around the lake. And there's always ducks and geese and all types of animals and butterflies.
Oh, that's nice. It's beautiful. I can picture definitely.
Yeah, so it's just beautiful and it's just serene. And like I said, it's kind of like a little oasis because you're like in the regular neighborhood and you hear all the noise in the cars. All of a
Mhm.
sudden, you walk down this path and here's this beautiful space. So that's my current sit spot, and it's just I love being able to go there and just kind of recalibrate.
I have the name of the gandules in English. It is a pigeon peas bush.
Oh, okay.
Pigeon peas bush is the bush that I have in my garden that I let it grow big and I love it. So thank you for sharing your current spot. And another concept that you talk in the book is about the productive leisure. And leisure is very important, but sometimes just the thought of doing nothing, you start feeling guilty that, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. Instead, you should be taking care of the kids or taking care of things in at your home or something that it has to do with work. And hey, do it right now. You have the time. So instead of laying on the couch watching TV or something, whatever it is that you feel leisure, you don't do it because otherwise you start combining. Okay, well, maybe I'm gonna fool myself and I'm gonna be doing something, something leisurely, but really I'm taking care of things. So talk about productive leisure because I totally, I was like, oh my God, I've been doing this for so many years.
I actually heard about this concept from Bridget Schulte, and she wrote a book called Overwhelmed, and it talked about just women and how we're overwhelmed. And she talked about this concept, and I thought it was so mind blowing. But essentially, it's that
Mhm,
a lot of times as women, we have a really hard time doing leisure that's just for leisure's sake. So just doing something that it has no
mhm,
purpose, or there's nothing, it's not for somebody else, it's just for ourselves and it's just for us to relax and to have fun.
mhm.
So yeah, like it would be like, oh, maybe you're like, well, instead of like sitting down and just focusing on this, I'm gonna fold laundry while I watch Netflix, or I'm gonna go for a run because that's exercise, not going for a run because I love to run. So it's,
Yeah.
or, I'm gonna do these things, but it's actually for the kids, or for my partner, or for my, family. So it's really that as women, we just have a really difficult time with that of just saying, like, I'm just gonna do this thing. It's just for me, and it's just because I want to do it. And there has to be no other reason attached to it. So,
Yes.
and it's important for us to be able to do that, to say, like, oh, this is just for me and I love it and it's great, and not have to kind of justify why we're doing something.
I thought about, for example, gardening. I love gardening, but of course, if I don't garden or do certain chores in the garden, it would be then, like if I don't weed certain areas, it will be madness, things like that. And I was thinking about that in my sitting spot. I was like, oh my God, I'm here and I'm making this list in my mind saying, okay, I say that I really relax myself while I'm watering the plants, but I have to water them. Otherwise, they will die. And I start thinking about hobbies. And then I start comparing myself with my husband, who has a long list of hobbies that has nothing to do with his job. And I was like, I have to make other hobbies in my life to really leisure myself. And so you make me think about that very hard because
Yeah, I have the same problem. My husband also has all these different hobbies that have nothing to
oh
do
my
with
God.
else, and yeah, and he loves them. So it's interesting.
Yes. What was your most recent awe moment that you were, oh my God, this is amazing?
Yeah, so I think my most recent awe moment um, that I recently went to the Tetons National Park with my family, which is in Wyoming. So we went camping there. And I think just the awe moment that I had was just we took like a little boat ride over to like one of the like kind of islands in the lake and took like a hike up, and we were able to just see this like really beautiful view of just kind of the entire park, and just seeing it from that like that distance and that vantage point. I think that was like my most recent like big awe moment where I was like, oh my gosh, wow, we're just kind of this like these small little beings on huge big earth, and all of these things are like just kind of interconnected and just beautiful. And I usually get those when we go to those national parks because they're always so beautiful. I think like another one that I experienced is I had just the opportunity and the honor to go to like a water keeping ceremony with an indigenous woman, and she explained how like all of the water is connected, and she is like a water keeper, so she had this jar of like water that is from all of these different parts of the world. So we were up in Whidbey Island in Washington, and we were able to go to the beach and just watch the kind of ceremony of her like merging new waters into like these other existing waters. And it just felt like I think I had that feeling of awe of again just feeling really connected to just like the earth and to the water and to like all of the other people around me, and just again recognizing that we're just all interconnected on this world.
I'm just having a vicarious awe moment while I listen to you about that ceremony, which I didn't know about. It's so beautiful, and I can't imagine because again, it just being sitting in your sitting spot, thinking about, oh my God, all the little things that are in the garden, and you are part of that, and you're looking at that, but at the same time looking at, that combination of different waters from different places, and you are like, oh my God, yeah, how connected we are. Definitely, it is an all moment, and I'm living it through your explanation.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Can you share about your mission with Color Outside, your organization?
Yeah, yeah. So Color Outside is all about kind of all about this, everything we've been talking about, but really focused on supporting women of color, so Black, Indigenous, and women of color to be able to reconnect to their well-being through outdoor adventure. So we do lots of things, things as small as just kind of like meetups where we might go hiking or we might explore someplace where we haven't been or that we always wanted to do, but wanted to do it with somebody else. And then we also do things like retreats, or we've done ski days, learn to ski days, where women will come out and we'll take a ski lesson, and we'll all be able to just kind of learn this new skill together. But ultimately, it's all about, that connection back to nature, but also that connection to each other, the larger community, as well as that reconnection to ourselves.
Great. And I'm gonna leave all the links in the notes of the program so people can go to your website and know about them. So are you ready for the flash questions?
I am, yes.
Okay, which book You can mention the title, the genre. Would you prefer to read under a tree?
So I do a lot of reading. So I do love reading and I love reading outside. I think kind of my go-to genre when I just really want to relax is romance. So, when I'm like, oh, I just want to read kind of like a fluffy book, it's not too stressful and it just has these very beautiful stories. So I think that that is my genre. So yeah, if anyone has any romance novels that they love, send them my way.
Me too, please. Me too, definitely. I love romance too. You are on your way to the highest point of a mountain in Salt Lake City in Utah. What songs are part of your playlist?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I think one of the songs I always love and I put on whenever I have a question about my playlist, it's I Would Die for You by Prince. I just love that song. I feel like it's my pump up song. And then I think outside of that, gosh, I love all types of music. So I would definitely have some like old school hip hop, so maybe some Missy Elliott. I'd have some like pop things. So pop music I love. And then maybe some of those like kind of like again, like older rock music that kind of gets you pumped up.
Yeah, exactly. That pump that is gonna push you go up. Mention one public park or garden you would like to visit or revisit and why.
Hmm. So I think when I think about gardens, I spent part of my life in Montreal, Canada, and we have a beautiful botanical gardens in Montreal. And I remember going there as a kid, so going there as field trips, and also going there with my family. So I would love to revisit that. That's a place I haven't been in, gosh, probably over a decade, but it's a place that has like a lot of happy memories for me.
So the name of this podcast is La Verdura de Hoy, the greenery, and we either eat the greenery or we have a greener experience. So what would be your verdura today?
Oh, I think that, oh, that's such a good question. I think something in terms of eating, because I like to eat. Um, I always love like really good salads. Like, and I feel like I am not always the best at making them, but if I go someplace and someone has it on the menu, I love just a really good salad that has like unexpected things. So,
Mm.
like the basics, but it has like different vegetables. If you have some different like
Chunky. You like chunky salads.
chunky salad, yeah. So like some beans and legumes and seeds, like put all of the stuff in there and mix it up. And I just love it. I will inhale it.
Well, it's been so a joyful moment for me to meet you, to have you on the podcast, Nailah. I thank you very much for it. And that definitely, I'm gonna leave all the links so people who are listening who can go and get the book because it's a beautiful book, it's a fun book, it's a deep book. So, and definitely I can say it, you are gonna feel like, ooh, coach by this wonderful woman. So, Nayala, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.
As I read Nayala's book this past summer, I felt both guided and understood. As Nayala mentioned during our conversation, Joyful by Nature is a structure to be like having a coach in your pocket, a gentle companion that encourages you to explore the joy and abundance already within reach. And what better place to read it than your favorite sitting spot in your backyard, surrounded by the beauty of nature? It has been a true joy talking to a fellow book author and nature lover. Nayala's story reminds us that well-being is a personal journey, one that evolves over time. To truly embrace it, we must learn to make adjustments along the way, finding balance to keep enjoying the people we love, our work, and those moments that bring us peace. If today's episode inspired you to reconnect with the outdoors and find your sense of joy, I encourage you to take the first step, perhaps just by stepping outside and noticing the abundance around you. Thank you for joining us And until next time, let's continue to find ways to be joyful by nature. La verdura de hoy es producida por mí, Perla Sofía Curbelo Santiago, para Zurda Media Enterprises. Edición y mezcla Norielis Ramos. Espero me acompañes en un próximo episodio. Mientras, comenta, suscríbete y comparte la verdura de hoy.